Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. In today's video, we are going to be talking about a very beautiful foliage plant called as the Ficus Elastica. But I'm sure you will be more familiar with the common name, which is the rubber plant. Now these have absolutely beautiful leaves which are broad oval shaped with a very dark emerald green color. The leaves are very glossy. The glossiness will be only present on the leaves if you are going to clean them regularly. Now you can see mine is starting to put out some new growth, and this is how the new leaf tends to look like. Now guys, let me tell you another important thing. It's not the most easiest plant for beginners because it's not a very forgiving plant. If it doesn't get the right type of care or if it doesn't get the right type of growing condition, it will start to have issues. Now this plant is an evergreen plant. Usually this plant tends to grow around 100 feet tall outdoors in their natural habitat, and indoor it will grow approximately around 10 feet tall. It is native to Asia, so it belongs to a tropical environment. As I've said this always, you know what it is when we talk about tropical environment. So let's start off with the care tips, starting with light. Like most of the plants in the genus of Ficus, rubber plants love lots of bright diffused light. They can tolerate early morning direct sunlight, but ensure that you're not offering them direct afternoon sunlight. Otherwise, that will definitely burn the leaves. Plants that do not receive sufficient light will become leggy. They will lose the lower leaves and the leaf color will also start to fade off. They will not be very glossy and vibrant how they tend to look in this video, because a lot of people do keep them indoor and they tend to keep them in a very low light condition. That is not going to work out really well. Ideally, a lot of people do say that this plant does well in low light, but guys, there are going to be a lot of problems. The plant will start to stretch, it will start to drop off the leaves, and it will start looking very leggy. So ensure that you're giving it a good amount of indirect bright light, especially if you're growing them indoor. Ensure that you're not keeping the plant under the air conditioning vent or the heater, otherwise that too will damage the leaves. Now talking about watering, this is the most important thing. As I said, it is a variety or the genus of Ficus. Water your rubber plant frequently during the summers, because that's when they are in their growing period. During winters, try to reduce the watering. They like to be kept slightly moist but not soggy wet, so ensure the container or the pot that you're using should have a drain hole. Rubber plants also are vulnerable to excessive dryness and do not tolerate drought well. They cannot be kept underwatered for a very long time, so ensure that you are doing a regular check. The moment you see that the upper layer of around 1 to 2 inches of the soil is dry, go ahead and do a complete watering until the water starts passing through the drain hole. Please do not keep them underwatered excessively. As I said, they are not a very forgiving plant. They will start to have issues and they will give you a hard time if they are not getting the right kind of conditions. Now talking about temperature and humidity, as I said, it belongs or it's native to Asia, a tropical environment. They prefer warmer temperature and a good amount of humidity. They will also do well in average humidity as well. You do not need to be worried, but if you are from a place wherein it is extremely dry indoors, then you can use a humidifier. And if you're growing them outdoor and you are from a very dry environment, you can use the pebble tray method, or you can club a lot of plants together in order to increase the humidity. Now talking about fertilizers, feed your rubber plant with a weak liquid fertilizer throughout the growing season, which is the summers. They are relatively heavy feeders when they are healthy. Usually I tend to feed them during summers once in 15 days, a little bit of a weaker fertilizer, my compost tea. I dilute it with water and offer it to my rubber plant. Now do not add any fertilizers during the winters because that's when they tend to go into kind of a dormancy, so you have to be extremely careful. Now talking about the potting mix, I tend to use the same soil mix which I use for my other plants, which is a mix of coco peat, garden soil, sand and perlite. The only thing that I tend to do over here is reduce the amount of coco peat a little bit. It's more of garden soil, sand and perlite. They prefer loose, porous and well draining soil. As I said, they prefer a slight amount of moisture but not soggy wet soil. So ensure you have a very loose soil. If the soil is going to be very compact, then it is going to be a little difficult for the plant to grow. So ensure that you're keeping these things in mind. Now talking about propagation, it is pretty simple to propagate your rubber plant. You can do a leaf propagation or you can do a stem cutting. So if you're going to take my advice, I would always suggest to go with a stem cutting rather than a leaf propagation. Even the leaves tend to get propagated, they do get roots, but it's a very slow process and it's not always 100% success. So the stem cutting tends to work out really well. Either you can do a water propagation or you can put it into the soil. After probably 4 to 5 weeks, they will start to show signs of roots. Now guys, talking about pest issues, yes, this plant also gets affected with pest issues, especially spider mites, scale insects, mealybugs and thrips. So always do a routine check. Always turn the leaves and check if there are any white flies beneath the leaves. If you tend to see any kind of infestation, always treat the plant at the early stage. Do not wait for the last minute. Do not let the infestation take over the plant, because once that happens, then it's very difficult for the plant to recover, especially this one. As I said, it's not a very forgiving plant, so you have to be extremely careful. The moment you see one or two, get into action, use whatever organic solution that you have been using all this while and treat the plant at the early stage. Now, the most important thing, is this plant toxic? Yes, this plant is toxic to humans and pets as well. So ensure that you're keeping this plant away from the reach of small children and pets. Now guys, also remember, when you're propagating this plant tends to ooze out a lot of sap, a lot of plant milk. So you have to be extremely careful, especially if you have very sensitive skin. Use gloves. Always clean the blade, knife and the scissors after you are done with the propagation. So guys, that's all about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep propagating.